MicroStrategy Desktop is a free BI dashboarding tool from MicroStrategy. Now, it might be free, but is it really any good? Let's find out. All right, so now let's suppose we work for a retail company and the business provided this mock-up for us that represents a dashboard they want. And we're going to use MicroStrategy Desktop to build this. So let's point out a couple things here. One, we know we need two sections of this report. One that's grouped by category and one that's grouped by department. So I'll show you how we handle that later. Now we also have store here, where each row going completely across both sections by category and department represents a store, okay? Now we have last week's sales, all right? So we know we're going to need some sort of conditional metric that filters by week, okay? Then we want to rank those sales, all right? And look, there's some highlighting here. So it looks like they want to color the bottom three stores red, okay? So we'll need to do some sort of thresholding there. Then they want us to include the variance to last year. So we know right there we're going to need some type of formula, all right? And now in the second column group, they want us to do something similar. They want the last week's sales for the entire department this time. And they want us to rank that. And then they want quarter-to-date sales, so sales for the entire quarter. Okay? So we're going to need two conditional metrics here to accomplish that. And then they want us to finally rank that. All right, so this is kind of a deceivingly complex report here. Let's see how easy it is to accomplish this using MicroStrategy Desktop. All right, so before we jump into MicroStrategy Desktop, let's take a quick look at our data set and make sure we have everything we need. All right, so the table we're going to use is store week item sales. All right, so that tells me that the level of this table, and by looking at the data, is store week item level. All right, so that's good. The lowest level we saw in our mock-up was last week they're looking for, so this should be fine. We have sales. We also have quantity, but I don't think we need that. Didn't see that on the mock-up. We have department. We know we need to group on that. And we also have category. We know we need to group on that as well. So it looks like we have everything we need here to produce our report. So let's bring this table into MicroStrategy Desktop and see how we can accomplish this. All right, so when you open up MicroStrategy Desktop, you're going to be brought to this screen here where you can click to add a new dossier. And then this is the interface. This is the interface that you'll use to ultimately build whatever dashboard you want to build. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to definitely add new data, of course. Can't do anything without data. And this brings up a ton of choices to choose from. All kinds of data sources. I think they've got pretty much everything you could think of here. So we're going to go down. We're going to use SQL Server today. So let me go ahead and do that. So now you can either build a query, okay? You could type a query yourself, so you can use either you can use the drag and drop interface, or you can type the SQL yourself, or you can just choose tables. So for this, I mean, that's pretty standard stuff, but for this we'll choose tables. And we're going to choose that table we were working with earlier. All right. So now I have already created a connection to my SQL Server here, so I'm just going to go ahead and select that. But if you didn't, you would obviously create a new one. All right, so let's go ahead and let's choose our table. So we're going to choose store week item sales. We'll drag that over. Now, the next thing you want to do here is you can either click finish to automatically start working with the data, but I would not recommend you do that. I would recommend you click prepare data, and I'll show you why. All right, so once you do that, you'll be brought to another interface, and this is where you can prepare the data before you begin to work with it. Okay, so you can see it brought in all of our fields here. All right, now if you're not familiar with MicroStrategy, MicroStrategy separates data into really two categories, attributes and metrics. All right, metrics are your numerical values that you would typically aggregate, right? Sum, count, right? Or you would use in formulas, things like that. And attributes are your data that you pretty much, the levels that you aggregate to, right? So category, department, class, UPC number, store, whatever, date, any kind of date criteria. All right, but if you'll notice here, it got some of these wrong, right? So it got our sales this year metric, all right? But you'll notice it labeled these other metrics, sales last year and quantity this year and last year, as attributes. Not sure why it got sales this year right, but not sales last year. But whatever the case may be, we need to convert those to metrics so we can aggregate them and use them in formulas and such. All right, so we'll just drag that over down to metrics. And we'll do the same thing with our quantity columns. We'll drag that down. So it's very easy to convert them. Not a problem at all. And then to rename it, again, very simple. So I like that so far. So we'll just rename these metrics. Again, what I look for in a tool is simple things should be simple. And so far they certainly are. Now the other thing you want to do here is the data types, okay? So let's right click week ending date, okay? Let's right click that. We're going to want to check the data type. You'll see that right now it's text. We want to change that to a date, and I'll show you why that's important later. Okay, now you notice to change it to a little clock, the symbol, okay? All right, I want to show you some of the other functionality. I want to show you the wrangle functionality here. So let's go ahead and click wrangle up at the top. All right. Now this is pretty neat. This is where you can massage the data before you bring it in. So it'll do all this stuff in memory. It's pretty powerful. So let's take a look at. I'll just show you a quick example here. So let's use load date. And I'll show you what you can do here quickly. So you have all this functionality here, but let's use split on separator. So have you ever seen columns? I'm sure we've all seen this before, where you'll have a specific column that is one field, but it contains a comma-separated list of values, right? Maybe it's a list of something, right? So by using this split on separator, I'll show you what we can do here. We can split this field into separate columns. So we'll choose split on separator. We're using load date. We're going to split on the dash. Okay, so we will come down. We'll choose other, and we'll type a dash here. Okay. Now this is going to split it. Now you know what this is going to do. It's going to split out the year, the month, and the day into separate fields. So I'll click apply, and then there you go. Now we have 3 new columns over here on the right. I can rename these. Okay. So pretty powerful stuff. So I'll click apply. And that's all for our wrangling. That's all the wrangling we want to do. Let's click finish and bring in this data and start working with this. All right, so here we are at our dashboard designer. Now, if you remember, we had 2 column groups, right? One on category, one on department in our mock-up. So in order to do that, we're going to use what's called a compound grid. Now, this is a very flexible grid, and you'll see why as we build our dashboard some, but I'm glad to see it here. It's a great thing that they added. All right, so now if you notice, regardless of whether we were grouping on category or department, everything was by store. So let's go ahead and add store to our rows. All right, so now you can see we got our stores added. Now let's create our first column group, that first section, which was by category. But before we do that, let's just suppose we want to filter this whole visualization, and we only really care about one category. Okay, so in order to add a filter, you just click the filter tab up here at the top, next to the editor, okay? And we can drag over category ID. And now let's suppose we just want to filter for this first one. And let's say that's just individually wrapped products, okay? So we can do that. All right, now let's go back to our editor. Let's create our first column set. So let's drag over category name, because we want to display category name, and there you go, individually wrapped products. Now that's our first column group. And now let's add our metrics. Now, if you remember, our first column we wanted to add were last week's sales, right? So let's see, what does that mean? That means we need to add a conditional metric. That means a metric, we don't want all of the sales for everything. We just want last week. So let's see what it's like to create a new metric here. Let's go ahead and try that. So we'll create a metric, and we want to use our sales this year. Yes, that's true. We want to add a filter. So let's add a filter. We only care about 1 week. There we go. So we can just click our week ending, and then we can just choose 1 week, right? Let's suppose that was last week. Click OK. All right. Click Save, and we'll name this sales. We'll name this last week sales. All right. Very simple to do. Nice. And now let's add our metric to our column set. Okay. Very simple to do. We can format that easily. So we can do number format, currency. Okay, very simple. Nice. Let's move along here and let's rank on this. So let's see how easy is it to do a ranking. It's very simple with this tool. Another thing, simple things should be simple. So let's right click this, and you'll see you have shortcut metric, rank. And that's it, very simple. And now it ranks the stores. All right, now the other thing we wanted to do is in our mock-up, they were color coding the bottom, I believe it was the bottom 5 stores, okay, red. All right, so let's see how we can do that. So that's called thresholding. All right, so let's right click. You got to right click the header and thresholds. All right, so now we don't want the lowest percent. We want to do it by value. So we'll do it based on highest value. All right, now we just want the bottom 5. So let's drag this down, and you can even type in this box here. You can even type the number 5. So this tool is super flexible like that. All right, let's delete this. Delete, and there you go. Now the bottom 5 will be red, but the others shouldn't be shaded at all. So we'll change this color, change this to white, and we'll click OK. And now you have the bottom 5 are shaded red. Nice. Very simple to do. So look how quickly we're able to move along here and build out this dashboard. All right, so now the next thing we had to calculate, if you remember, it was our percent variance to last year. So this means we need to do 2 things. One, we need another metric that calculates last week's sales for last year, right? We have last week's sales this year, but we need last year. And then we need to create a formula to calculate the percent variance between the two. All right, so we're going to repeat the steps we did for last week's sales, only we're going to do it for last year. So we'll create a metric, okay, and we'll call this last week sales last year. And then we'll choose our sales last year, right? We're worried about last year now. And then we'll add a filter. And we'll choose the same week, right? Because this will give us last year now, that same week. All right, great. Very simple. We've already done that. Now we need to create a formula, okay? So now we need to create another metric on top of these metrics, and you can start to see how powerful this becomes when you start creating metrics and then building metrics on top of metrics. So let's create another metric. Only this time, we're going to switch to the formula editor. That's this button in the lower left, and we're going to build out a formula now. So we're going to clear what's in there, and we're going to call this last week percent variance. Okay, we can even enter a description, but let's just build out our formula. So we are going to go down to our new metrics that we built, and it's sales last week minus sales last week last year divided by sales last week last year. Okay, now let's save that. We can validate it. It is valid. Click save. All right, so now notice we created our last week's sales last year, but we don't want to actually display it on the grid, right? We just wanted to use it in a formula, okay? So now let's add our formula, our percent variance, to the report. Okay, now they're all zeros, so let's see how easy it is to format. We want to format this as a percent, so you simply right-click, number format, percent, and we'll say we want to display it as negative. Okay, and let's say we want 1 decimal place. Very simple. All right, and remembering our mockup, we also wanted to rank on this. So again, super simple, right-click, shortcut metric, rank. And then we wanted to add our threshold. So we'll right-click the header now, select thresholds, and all that looks good. We want to change this to a 5. I want to delete this and change this color to white. So it's just the bottom 5 are highlighted in red. Click OK, and there we have it. All right, so it's coming along nicely, but you look at the top here, you see how individually wrapped products repeats for each metric, but this is a column group. We don't need to see it repeated for each one, right? We just want to see it once. All right, so in order to do that, you're going to click this, these 3 dots in the upper right corner, select more options, all right, and under headers and columns, we want to just select merge. Okay, so it'll merge those into one. So let's click save, and there you have it. Now you only see it once, okay? And we can also format this, and let's make it centered. Okay, great. See, now that looks more like our mockup, all right? All right, so we finished our first column set, which is by category, and now we want to add another one by department, and we're going to do a couple different things there. All right, so let's go ahead and add another column set. So now this column set was going to be by department, so we'll drag department down there. All right, so now I think in our mock-up, the first metric we were supposed to add here was last week's sales again, but I'm going to change it up. I'm going to add month-to-date sales. But you'll notice there's a problem. we don't have month in our data set. So what can we do? Well, this is why it was so important to make sure our data type for our week ending date was set to a date, because we can easily right click this, create time attributes, and MicroStrategy can automatically create the missing date attributes like month, quarter, and year. So we'll click OK, and there you go. It's populated those for us. But we're going to suppose that's not going to work for us. All right? Maybe we have a fiscal calendar we need to use, so maybe we need to bring in another table to do this. All right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's add another table, and let's see how easy it is to add and link and join additional data sets. So we'll click Add Data, New Data. And again, we'll choose our SQL Server. We'll select Tables. Now let's go ahead and select our Weeks Lookup Table. This has all of our fiscal weeks. All right, we'll prepare data to make sure everything's all right. And there's no metrics on this table, so we'll move these up to attributes. All right, so let's click Finish. And how would you like to access it? It can bring it into memory, or it can connect live. We'll choose to connect live. Although it's not a lot of data, so we probably could have just brought it into memory. All right, so now we have our two data sets in here. But we need to join them. Okay, because we need to know how do we link these together. What's the link? So we're going to link these on weekend date. So we will right click weekend date, link to other data set, and that'll bring up a pop-up window where we'll click our drop down and we'll choose the week ending from our other data set. Okay, so this is just like you would join tables in SQL. Okay, only MicroStrategy is going to do it. All right, and there you go. You'll have this little icon there that says it's linked. Okay. All right, so now we've broadened an additional data set. We've joined our data set. So now we have all of the attributes from this data set available to us. Okay, so now we need to create our month-to-date sales metric. But creating our month-to-date sales metric is going to be a little tricky. Let me show you why. You see, we have a column group over here, or a column set on department. So we want our month-to-date sales to represent the sales for the entire department. But you'll remember we created a filter here. Right? We're filtering for only a specific category within that department, right? But we want the entire department, okay? So we want to essentially ignore this filter, okay? Now, when you create a filter here, this filter applies for the entire visualization, okay? And that's what we want for most of the metrics on this visualization. But we don't want it for our month-to-date by department metric. We want to see what the sales are and compare the sales for this category to the sales for the entire department. Okay? Now, in order to do this, let's, again, right-click. We'll create a metric. All right? We'll call this month-to-date department sales. Now we'll choose our main sales metric. All right? Sum is fine. Now, to add a filter, let's choose the month that we want. Okay, so we will choose fiscal month, and we'll just choose, this is fiscal month, so we'll choose, say it's the last month. Okay, we'll click Save. That's fine. All right, now you'll notice here, there's this area for the level. Okay, we need to change the level, right? Now, what did we say? We were filtering on category ID, all right? So we'll keep this visualization level here because we want it to be by store, but let's add another level. We'll choose category ID. Okay, now we'll click this ellipsis over here on the right, and now you'll see the relationship with report filter. Okay, so for category ID, we want to drop this down and we want to choose ignore. Okay, so now it will ignore the report filter on category ID. Okay, so we'll click OK, and we'll click Save. All right, now let's add our metric to the report. And there we have it. The sales are much higher. That makes a lot more sense because they're for the entire department. Okay, now just to show you that this actually does work and is ignoring our filter, I'm going to create another month-to-date sales metric, only I'm not going to add the level, okay? So I'll go ahead and do that quickly here. And you'll notice when we get down to level here, I'm not going to choose anything. I'm going to leave the default. And then we'll add our fiscal month. We'll choose that. Click Save. Okay, and then let's add that to our column set. And you can see the sales are much lower. See, that's because the filter is getting applied to this metric. However, on our month-to-date department sales, the filter is not getting applied, so the numbers are much higher. Okay, just to show you that that works. All right, so now I'll remove that. And let's move on. Let's make our quarter to date department sales metric. So again, same thing. And this time we'll filter on fiscal quarter. We'll choose all of quarter 4. Click OK, save, save. And then finally we'll add our metric to the report. And there we have quarter to date department sales for the entire department, and the numbers are much higher than even the month to date sales, which makes perfect sense. All right, now to finalize the report, we'll just add our rankings. And then finally, we'll add our thresholds. And then that completes our report. So as you can see, hopefully this showed you how versatile this free tool from MicroStrategy really is. But what are some of the downsides? Well, some of the downsides are data. If you're working with really large data sets, this is a desktop tool. You'll have to keep that in mind. Now, this can hook in to an existing MicroStrategy server environment if you have one of those available, and you can get more power out of this tool. But very impressed with this tool for MicroStrategy. I think it's a great free offering, and if you work in BI and you don't have a tool, if you're a smaller organization or you're just doing some small things within a department, I think it's a great option. Thanks so much for watching, but please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.